What's up, guys? Welcome to the Serial Dreamer podcast. My name is Daryl Fagans. As I said before, I'm a realtor here in the North Atlanta area, and I am also what I consider to be a serial dreamer. Have been for a very long time, and I started this podcast because for a little bit of time of my life, I felt like dreaming was kind of over, and I needed a lot of inspiration, motivation. And I found that in a lot of different people, some coaches, some mentors. And so now I really want to kind of talk about all of those things as I bring to this platform a lot of my inspirations, a lot of people that I look to for words of advice, as well as just encouragement on getting to that next step. But today I really want to talk about just the last 5 years is where I'll start at right now. As I said, I will tell kind of my journey. Dreams deferred, dreams realized, dreams achieved, some not achieved. But right now, I'm going to start with the last 5 years because those 5 years I think are the most important to where I am right now, mentally, spiritually, physically, and just overall, just where I am in my life. Currently, the last 5 years play the biggest part in that. So I wanted to start this season off with talking about that first, setting the foundation so that you guys that are listening can understand exactly where I am and kind of how I got to this place. And in the comments, when you start, commenting, do ask any questions. I really want to, just really have conversations about dreaming. I think that's a lost concept with a lot of people. We're so caught in the world that we don't dream like we used to. We don't have these big goals that are bigger than ourselves anymore. I always say that whenever your dream is bigger than you, usually it has a calling attached to it. And I think we run from that calling, which also causes us to kind of defer that dream as well. And that's where I was for the last 5 years, kind of just deferring everything, running from everything, and kind of ignoring that calling and also ignoring my dream. But at the end of the day, what we all want is, I think, to be acknowledged or to be seen, or for our dream to be seen or be respected or be taken seriously. But I think that we have to first take our own dreams seriously. We have to first understand where we're going and why we're going there and how we got there before we can expect anybody else to. Blessed in mind that I do have people in my life that I think caught on to my dream very early on, and they would not let me or will not let me forget that dream. No matter how far I stray from it, they keep reminding me of that dream, and honestly, it's caused some friction. It has caused me some years of, I think, not having those relationships as close as they once were because of that. And that's that's something we'll get into later on in other episodes as well. That accountability factor. When people are holding you accountable to your dream, how you react to that. And my reaction to that was not that great. But all in all, we're here. So let's talk. Let's be transparent. Like I said, in the comments, ask any questions. I will address them in later episodes. These episodes here are taped every day. But my interviews, I've taped, I think, 3 interviews already. And I have set dates that those will drop. But my episodes as this, I tape every day. It's just me getting on here talking. There's no script. It's just me taking what I want to talk about, releasing it, into this microphone and letting it go from that. This is kind of becoming my therapy. I actually have a lot of episodes that I'm probably not going to put out, or I might, I don't know, where I really dive deep into a lot of stuff. I have a few phone conversations that me and a few friends of mine have allowed to be recorded for the podcast. I don't know if I'm going to put those out or not. But like I said, those are just us being transparent, me mainly, being very, very transparent about where I've been these last 5 years especially. And I keep honing in on those 5 years because I've never been as broken and as lost as I have been in this last chapter of my life. I won't say 5 years. I'll actually say probably 3.5 years. I've kind of just been going with the emotions, going with the flow of where I was at, going with the speed of the people around me, and not really existing for myself, but kind of existing in the environment for which I was. So let's talk. That begins with, let's say, May of 2020. I moved to Huntsville, Alabama, and I can honestly tell you that out of all the moves that I've made in my life, I moved a lot in my 20s. Out of all the moves I've ever made in my life, this move here is the only move that, even with all the good that came from it, this is the only move that if I had to go back, if you send me back to May of 2020, if you send me back to April of 2020, this is a decision that I don't make. I don't move to Huntsville, Alabama, for a lot of reasons. Biggest reason being, it was just a mistake. It wasn't for me, and it wasn't. I don't think God intended for me to go there at all. What I think happened is once I got there, once God knew that I made the decision to go, I think He even pivoted, kind of like a cheap GPS. You miss your exit, and the GPS doesn't tell you to go back home. It doesn't say, well, the trip is over, we're just not gonna go. You're headed to Disney World, but since you missed that exit, now you're just not gonna go there. The GPS will do one of two things. It'll turn you around, or it'll find another route to get you where you're supposed to go. And what I think happens a lot is that God kind of recalculates, and He finds a different path to get us to where He wants us to be. And I think we mistake that with being, oh, well, God meant for me to be here. Because this happened, this happened, this happened, that means that God meant for me to be here. And that's not at all the case. I think that He just recalculates from our mistake, from our bad decision, and He gets us a different direction to go where He wants us to go ultimately. And so with being in Huntsville, I got there, like I said, in May of 2020. And instantly that summer, I probably had over, I'd say 90, somewhere close to 90 kids, 50. I don't know, it was a very high number of athletes from the Huntsville area coming to me to train because it was COVID and there was absolutely nothing else for these athletes to do. Schools were not having practices. I think football was practicing, and I do think some of the sports were practicing, but it was very limited, so there was not many training sessions, and there wasn't a lot of places for these kids to go and get resistance training and things like that. So all these kids were coming to my very small garage in Madison, Alabama, and they were doing Vertimax training. And so I made a lot of relationships with, the entire community very fast. And off of that, a lot of people were telling me, you should do this full time. You should definitely train Vertimax all the time because all these kids are going to come and they're going to keep coming and all this. So when I made the decision to say, I'm going to train, and I put price points out there, I was literally charging $25 a week for Vertimax training, and these kids were seeing results after one session. These kids were seeing huge results after like 1 or 2 weeks, and I'm literally only charging $25 a week. Once I make that a staple and I say, well, this is what it is, you have to pay in order to book a session, because at that point my garage was like literally full. I mean, I had kids in my garage. I had kids coming in my side door from my garage, coming in, eating my snacks and doing everything. And I was cool with it because that's the type of person I am. But forgive me the curse, and you'll see that later on as I talk. But I had to start setting boundaries, you know. So once I started setting those boundaries, all of a sudden, less and less kids were coming. And that was my biggest fear when it comes to going into a business of training or going into any business where you're relying on somebody else for your income, meaning I had to rely on them to come. I had to rely on their parents to pay for my income. That was always a big fear of mine because of that. What if you decide not to come anymore? What if you decide that you don't want to do it anymore? So now I'm losing money, and these kids and their parents, you know, they made the ultimate decision to say, you know what, well, we can't come all the time. You know, so they would come here and there. And again, that's not great for, if anybody knows about, you know, being a business owner, that's not great for your ability to project your earnings or save anything or kind of know what your budget is for that week, for that month, because you don't have a consistent flow of money coming in. And so as that started occurring, I started just kind of figure out other ways to kind of navigate, because at this point I had already started letting my friend circle know that, hey, I made a mistake. You know what I'm saying? Like, this was in 2020. I was very clear I made a mistake. And I started preparing myself that in 2021 I was going to be moving back to Atlanta. I put Texas up in the top two because I had a couple of kids that I had started working with recruitment wise that lived in Texas. So I was looking at Texas as well, just as a place I had never been that, you know, I wanted to, you know, try out. But ultimately I was like, you know, I really do want to move back to Atlanta. I was doing really well before we moved here to Huntsville. So I started looking like, okay, come May, I'm gonna head back to Atlanta. You know, maybe March comes around, a few new kids come into the picture, and again I start thinking with my heart, not my mind. And so I'm like, oh man, I can't leave these new kids. They're only, you know, this is a freshman, these are 8th graders. You know, I can't leave yet because, you know, they're young. I need to stay here, you know, just a little while so I can get them through at least to their sophomore year. Then I'm gone. And I'm thinking that with making that sacrifice, I would get that type of, you know, loyalty and love back in return, and it just didn't happen. You know, I found myself once again like, golly, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm making myself available to everybody when they need me to be available. But then at the end of every day, I go home and I really sit down and realize that I don't actually have any friends in this city. I have clients. I have people who, you know, their kids come to me. I have, you know, athletes, but I don't have anybody who I talk to on the phone that's like, hey, let's go get a drink. Hey man, like, it's been rough. Let's go do this. You know, I didn't have any of that. So, you know, I'm going home at the end of every night and I'm kind of resetting myself by having these type of phone conversations with, you know, my therapist, and then also with, you know, just friends, and all coming to the conclusion like, man, like, when's that date coming? When am I leaving? Like, when am I getting back to, you know, what I had going on? When am I getting back to my dream as I, you know, try to push everybody else here to fulfill their dreams? When do I get back to going after mine? And, you know, time just kept going past. I kept making up excuses of why I'm not going to go, because this person needs me, this kid needs me to stay, that kid needs me to stay. And it just started getting rougher and rougher on myself. And then in 2022, when I brung my baby boy into the picture, he was 7 at the time, and that's when it really started kind of making me think a little bit outside of myself. Before I was kind of like, I can deal with it. It's me, but when I think about him and I'm looking at what he needs, I started really kind of considering, okay, in order for me to stay here, in order for me to do these things, I have to have help for one, but I also have to make sure that he sees me in a great space. He sees me in a great mood. He sees me in a happy place. He sees me, going after what I love to do. He sees me enjoying the work that I'm doing, because that's how he's going to grow up to know to do the same thing. And so that started playing in my mind a lot, just figuring out how do I allow him to see that part of me that's important. So 2022 passes by, 2023 comes in. I start this program called DSA. Some kids from my high school that I was doing some training for talked me into starting this program because they needed recruitment help. And so I started this program. It was a post-grad basketball team. And I don't recruit. I just kind of invite the kids that said they want to do it already, and some of the kids locally that I knew didn't get any offers and stuff. So I just a little small little just put it together. Nothing big. I didn't go out and recruit nowhere. I didn't go to no games and recruit or anything like that. And so I put this team together. We start off by going to the World Championships in July. We go down to Orlando, and then after that, the season kicks off probably in, I want to say it was supposed to kick off in October, but then we eventually end up really tipping off, I think, in early November, late October, just off of, just fees and things like that, which in year one, I wasn't actually really too mad about it, because year one, you expect stuff like that, especially with a new program to that level. I was putting these kids on a national schedule, so that's something that you don't see a lot in year one programs. We got invited to like the Golden State Classic and stuff like that. We got into the Border League tournament, preseason tournament in Las Vegas, like very big tournaments that honestly, that's just me and my big way of thinking. Like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to try to go as big as I can, because the bigger the program, the more attention the program gets, the bigger the odds are that these kids are going to be recruited to bigger schools. They're going to get more looks the bigger our schedule is. So getting these opportunities was a great thing, but then what comes along with that is we have to think about how we're going to fund it. So I put together a package. Mind you, the kids and parents, everybody agreed to what the fees were, what the terms were, but life happens. A lot of these kids were working for themselves to pay for these fees. So year one, I actually can tell you that I enjoyed year one of DSA. But there was a end goal and there was a transition that was supposed to happen at the end of that first year. The end goal was, I'm going to get these kids recruited because they deserve it. Because I've known these kids since I've been here. It's now 2023, so now I've been here for 3 years. I've known these kids since I touched down in this city. Some of these kids were the first kids to come and train with me on the Vertimax, so I want them to succeed. Second reason, because most of the city doesn't think that it's going to happen, which was absolutely crazy to me, that a program comes to your city that is nothing but positive and provides opportunities for kids, and so many people had so much disdain for it. It's not going to work. You can't go on the national schedule. Ain't nobody going to get recruited. He's getting the worst of the worst out of the city. Just all sorts of negative comments about it. But all in all, the end goal was get this whole team recruited, transition to Atlanta. That was it. That was my final, goal sheet for myself. I had the dream board up on my wall that was in my office in my house. I had everything laid out. This is what it's going to be. I've told my friends that are in Atlanta, hey, I'm coming back June of 2024. This season will be over. These kids will be recruited. I'm already looking at places. I'm back in Atlanta June 2024. Let's get back to what we were doing. Let's get back to chasing our dreams. Let's get back to the collective of making things happen. I'm ready. This is it. This is final. That season goes through. We had a lot of bumpy times. It ends very well, though. We end in a great place as a team. Very close bonded team. After all the downs that we went through that first season, we didn't win nationals, but we end with a good showing at nationals. And with so many coaches, even the tournament director at nationals was like, y'all should have won this tournament. Which that's the worst thing you want to tell it to a coach is y'all should have won. But I understood where that came from. We had a very great team. We just clicked at the wrong times, and then we had injuries at nationals. It was a lot going on at nationals that it just wasn't our year, and I was cool with that because, like I said, we ended on a very positive note as far as our team is concerned, and unfortunately, ending like that caused me to feel like I got to go into year 2. I owe it to the program to go into a second year. The program is going so well. There's so many people inquiring about it, and again, that's the heart of me. I'm thinking about this city alone, like, it's starting to click. They're starting to get it. They're starting to see it. If I would have been thinking with my mind, my business mind especially, I would have noticed that all the inquiries I was getting, the serious ones at least, the ones who were like legitly putting together professional emails with their film packages, their parents were ready to have conversations. You can tell they're like serious about whatever the fee is, I'm ready to pay it because they did their research. They see other postgrad are $25,000, $30,000 and up. So they're ready to pay whatever it is that is necessary. And I'm noticing that these are all from outside of the city. A lot from up there in the Atlanta area, which should have been a green light for me. But so many other cities, so many different other states. And so I'm like, okay, we need to get housing. We need to figure out where these kids are going to live. And I end up talking myself into staying in Huntsville for another year to do year 2 of this program, and I end up going after more Huntsville kids than bringing in the kids from the outside, which I should have did the opposite. I should have, if I was gonna stay in Huntsville, I should have filled that program with kids from all over the place because they come in with a different mindset. Because if the majority is going to always, I feel like, win the battle of mind. And so I had a majority of local, comfortable kids and then a very slim few, not very strong-willed kids coming from outside. So you bring in kids who are just eager to be away from home and are ready to just fit in. They're going to do what everybody else is doing. So they're not going to come in with the work ethic that they need to come in with. So that was just not the right decision for me as far as even trying to go into year 2. And, we start the summer off. The summer fees were very light, very inexpensive. Still have kids to this day from that team that have not paid those summer fees. But quiet as kept, I found a way for us to still go through that summer. And how do you think that happened? That came out of my own pocket. So we ended up going to, I think we played 20-something games that summer. We ended up winning Worlds. You remember in year 1, I think we placed 4th. Year 2, we ended up winning. But I can tell you that the win felt worse than the 4th place did in year 1. And one of my kids on the team, actually asked me. He was like, "You not happy? Like you ain't proud of us?" Because I just didn't have the excitement. You know, it just didn't feel good. You know, this team was crazy talented, but this team was the hardest to coach and the hardest to understand as far as like how am I supposed to get you recruited if I can't even honestly tell a coach that you're going to be good for their program. And I don't mean dribbling the ball. I mean as far as everything you do on the outside, your work ethic, you know, the smoking, the drinking, the gun toting. Like it was the worst situation I could have ever found myself in, and I could have never expected it. You're talking about Madison, Alabama, Harvest, Alabama. You know, I'm like, what is going on? Why is this program going south instead of getting better after we just came off of winning a world championship? We just came off of having a great end to year one. Why is it going so bad? Like, I felt like I brought in decent kids. You know, again, a couple of these kids on this program were kids I've known for a while. You know, and so it was just weird to me how it was going. And it was even more disturbing to me that some of the kids that I felt like really had a shot at playing in college were letting the kids who probably won't get much playing time even in this program convince them to do things they knew were wrong. And that was the most frustrating part of year two, is it started like that. Once we got back from Worlds, it just went downhill. There was no fees being paid, no communication being had, but somehow, some way, it all ended up back on me. We're not practicing because we don't have a gym. The gym we were using, kids didn't pay their fees, couldn't use it anymore. But it falls back on me. So me and the coaches decided, you know what, we're just going to let the kids know, hey, get your own work in. We'll practice maybe once or twice a week. Because at the end of the day, this is a post-grad program. You know, we'll practice a couple times a week. You know, go over sets, make sure you guys are, you know, all in one accord. But at the end of the day, get your work in. Because if you're not going to pay your fees for the gym, then you just got to get your work in on your own. Nobody's getting work in. Maybe 20% of that team got work in. And it showed. You know, once the season finally got ready to start, we had to push so many games back, cancel so many games, because once again, from August to October, no fees were being paid. Maybe 3 people were paying fees. You want me to provide for 12 kids to have a 80-game season off of 3 people paying their monthly fee. But yet, once again, I start getting stuff coming back to me, what's being said around the city, what people are saying, this person saying this kid wants to quit because of this kid says, oh, I paid my money and then he still canceled the game. The kid that didn't even pay for the summer is spreading this narrative that everybody has paid and then I just canceled the game. So that's what's coming back to me. So now, not only am I frustrated because I'm trying to figure out how to make this season go, but now I'm getting hurt by putting all this into these kids and then figuring out that, man, like at the end of the day, they don't really care. And with them not caring, they're willing to throw anybody under the bus as long as they don't look like they're the issue. So now I'm scrambling, trying to figure out how to make sure we can at least get some games in for the fall for the kids who did pay. So it just keeps going downhill. We play, a few games. The JUCO games were complete blowouts. And mind you, starting this season off, we had JUCOs not wanting to play us because they knew we had a really solid team that could potentially give them a lot of trouble. That flips to literally JUCOs texting me saying, we need a game, come play us on this date, come play us on that date, because they knew they were going to blow us out. That's how the season ended up flipping. That's how bad the season ended up going. So many people ended up quitting. We had, I ain't even going to put that out there, but just a lot happened during that fall that I was like, what in the world just happened? So December comes and my son actually comes to me. We were getting ready. I was getting ready to go to a basketball game, a Spartan game. And my son comes to me and he was like, I don't want to go to the game. And mind you, I'm like, I thought he enjoyed going to the game. I thought he enjoyed being around, you know, the people. I thought he enjoyed seeing, the kids that he's seen train with us before and stuff like that. He says, in a nutshell, he breaks it down to, it's like we're always going to the games, we're always going to these camps, we're always going, he called it, always going to these practices. We were talking about like the camps that I take kids to or whatever. And he was like, but nobody ever comes to see me, like nobody comes to watch me do anything, nobody ever, he really started understanding and feeling like, it's like only time I see anybody is when I come to their stuff. They're not coming here. They're not doing anything with me. So why do I gotta keep going to their stuff? And I took his feelings as valid. I said, at the end of the day, I'm not gonna force him to go sit at a game, especially because he's not into basketball at all. When he goes to the games, he likes to color and likes to talk. And so he's at the games and people are steady telling him to shh. And they're still telling him to watch the game. They're still telling him to sit down. Myself included. Like, hey, we gotta sit down. We gotta watch the game. Here's this. Here's that. So he's sitting there for 3 hours. He's watching a JV game. He's watching a girls game. He's watching the varsity game, and he's just not interested in it. So when he said that to me, we didn't go to that game that night, and I literally sat there. I think we watched a cartoon movie that night. I forget what movie it was, but we sat there. And that night, I decided, you know what? We won't go to no more games. I want to see who comes here. Who wants to, outside of basketball, if they're going to even notice that we're not there. I'm so important, so they say. So let's see just how important my son is to them. He's not going to be there. We don't go to a game the rest of the season. We don't go to the Huntsville Times tournament. We don't go to any games from December all the way to the end of the season in February. And the kids that we've seen in that amount of time are the kids I literally talk to still now. Because at the end of the day, when you're genuine, you're genuine. And there were some genuine kids, genuine parents that I encountered in that time span that I was in Huntsville. And I still communicate with them frequently. My son still asks about them. That's how I really know who's made an impression on him, because he asks about them now. There's people he don't ask about anymore. There's people that I can ask him if he wants to, do you want to call this person? Do you want to text this person? Do you want to? He'll say no. And that lets me know how they made him feel. And how they made him feel directly impacts how now you've made me feel. Because now I see exactly what this was. This was a coach moving into this city where nobody knows him, and everybody's seeing an opportunity. They first saw an opportunity to get better on Vertimax, but it needs to be very low cost or free, because we know his heart. He really has a heart for these kids, so let's use that. Then they see a program. Oh, we can get recruited. We can get in front of colleges. But it needs to be very, very low cost, or it needs to be free. Because we know his heart. He has a heart for these kids. Let's use that. Then it goes to February comes, and I call my friend group once again. And I think this was them kind of be like, oh, here we go. Okay, so you're coming back again. So you say you're coming back. This time I say, you know what, hey, here's my lease. I just signed a lease. And I'm coming up there this date to look at the place I just signed. I signed the lease sight unseen, because the thing is, when I was moving up there in 2019, we saw 2 apartment complexes that were available. Cause we were going all over the place looking for an apartment in the North Gwinnett school district at that time. We couldn't find an apartment. We ended up finding 2 places. They were right across the street from each other, but they were both Peachtree Ridge. And so I contacted both of those places I remember what the first one looked like. I vaguely remember what the second one looked like, but the second one was what was available, and it actually was a little bit bigger, and so I felt like it was a better opportunity with having, a youngin with me. So signed it sight unseen. Came up there. My sister Shan ended up meeting me at the apartment complex. We went and seen the apartment. That was the first time I laid eyes on the apartment. The property manager was like, "Do you like it?" And I was like, honestly, it wouldn't matter if I did or not. I already signed the lease. I just need to see it. I just need to be able to put eyes on how much stuff I can bring. Do I need to get rid of anything? Will everything fit? That's all I need to come up here and see. So we leave from there, and we set a move date for March 7th. And I literally, at this point, hadn't told anybody besides my friend group and my parents. I post on social media that I'm moving, and that's when all of a sudden I became the villain, I think, in everybody's story. The team is mad. I'm giving up on them. I gave up on the season. Nobody wants to take accountability for the fact that I'm literally sitting here trying to tell my landlord, hey, I have to pay the rent a little bit late because I have taken stuff out of my pocket to pay for travel for this game, or pay for this game, or pay for something that had to come out of my pocket. Nobody wants to take accountability for that. I'm a single father, and I'm sitting here, I'm paying for stuff for young men, not even kids anymore, for real. These are 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old, 22-year-old young men who refuse to get up and go do for what they say they want to accomplish. But I'm the villain. I'm all these things, and I'm seeing it, I'm hearing it. But at this point, I'm so tapped out, I'm already in Atlanta in my mind, so nothing that's being said at this point is getting to me anymore. Before, it kind of hurt my feelings a little bit. I wanted to kind of prove people wrong. I wanted to make sure they knew, like, no, I'm for you. Let's add one more game. I can make it happen. We can just figure it out. I'm going to make sure you get recruited. Forget the fact that you're not posting on your social media. Forget the fact that you're not doing your part. Forget the fact that you're out here smoking. Forget the fact that you're out of shape and you're not trying to get in shape. Forget the fact that you're not paying your fees. Regardless of all that, I'm still going to make it happen for you because I just don't like what's being said about me, about my program. So I'm going to make it happen for you. But at this point in time, I had tapped out. I completely tapped out. My son was miserable. I was miserable. I literally had nobody in the seat. I didn't have anybody that even I had help with my son. My son was literally going to every game with us. He's traveling on his van. He's exhausted in the morning, getting ready to go to school. He's miserable. He's frustrated. He don't like being at the games. He don't like being around the guys. It's just miserable for him. And I'm watching this in his face every single game we went to. Every time we got on the van, even with the van situation, there's been times where I had to make deals with the van company, and I can pay a little bit later on this because of so much stuff that I'm having to move and shake and do because they're not paying their stuff. And it was very hard to watch what I felt, but to see it in my son's face and to see it in him, that is what hurt me the most. And that, I think, is what really caused me to kind of pull back completely. I stopped answering the phones. I just didn't want to talk to anybody in Huntsville. It's outside of a couple of people. And that was because I had a couple of kids that started. Well, one kid started during this transition period, like around January. I think he started training with me, and I had been trying to get him to train with me for a couple of years. He was younger though at that time, so he was a freshman coming now. So now he's ready to start training, ready to get going. And I hate that he waited so late because he really, I think, would have been one that kind of helped turn the tide in just the type of kids I attract to the program, to the training regimen, because he was so dedicated to it. And he was already getting his teammates and stuff to hit me up, so I feel like he would have helped turn the tide. Him and a couple other kids that were young, all in the same class, that 2028 class is what I'm referring to. they were just ready, and a part of me was like, I can't leave. Here it goes again. But I really had to sit down and think, like, even though I know that this class here is going to be a class that stays dedicated, that makes it for the next 2 years, they're going to be committed to this program. They're going to be consistent. They're going to allow, I could literally, off of that 28 class, I know for a fact I could have made a living off of that class. I could have literally made a living off that class. Just off of what they would have paid for training and stuff like that, I would have made a living off of it. But then I've had to think to myself, once they graduate, what do I have? Do I believe that the rest behind them are going to keep this going? Do I believe there's more after that? Do I believe I can stay in this city? And I started, pros and cons. And the reason I'm not saying any names is because I haven't spoke to any of the people that I would say and get their permission to say their name, even though it's in a good light. But one of my former athletes' moms, who was very instrumental in helping me get through that first season, because he ended up getting injured, and they still stayed like very consistent, very loyal, very dedicated to the program, even with him being injured for the whole first part of the season. But his mom, she has been huge in just my mindset, kind of staying focused, kind of bringing me back, helping me with Noel whenever she can. Like, she's taking him to work with her, because she wasn't off on a couple of days and I had to be somewhere that he couldn't go. And instead of me having to give that opportunity up, she literally took him to work with her. So, like, she was so helpful. Like, him, in the class of 2028, and their moms and dads, were solely the only thing on the pros sheet. The only thing. I wrote so many cons that I just started laughing at some point. I started laughing. I was like, at this point, I feel like you're just being dramatic, my guy. Like, you're just being dramatic. It's not that bad. Like, you're not literally this miserable in this city. And I looked at all those cons and I said, I have to keep the decision that I made. I have to go. March 7th, I have to get out of here. And my son, I promised myself that I wouldn't tell him that we're moving until I knew for a fact that we were. So I tell him that we're going. We go up and we see the school that he'll be attending. He falls in love with the school immediately. The resources they have, the way the teachers are patient with him, the way the teachers just, community just came around him and welcomed him and really brought him into that mix. Day one, when he started at that school, I seen an instant change when I picked him up that afternoon that I'd never seen when he was at the school in Huntsville. Never. And in the schools he went to in Huntsville, that's a whole episode by itself. Literally, one school is being investigated for fraud. Another school, every teacher except for one has quit. Then the other school, the teacher that gave him the most trouble is being reprimanded for something separate. I didn't even file any complaints or anything on my end, but she's being reprimanded for something completely different. So it's like, so much is going on with those schools. That's a whole other episode. Him and how he's doing, and the way that even his dream light has switched on is a complete episode in itself. But we move up here, like I said, March 7th. It was a Friday. That next week, I'm literally, just setting everything up, getting everything going, getting everything in place, seeing some friends, seeing my family that's up here, like just kind of getting him used to the area, because he's never been here before. So getting him used to the area. And then April comes, and the position I was going to take ended up falling through. Had no idea why it fell through. To this day, the director and the recruitment manager for that position are like, there's nobody know. Like, that situation was all I can say was God stepped in and made it very clear to me, you've been deferring dreams that are connected to your calling, that are also connected to other people's opportunities. So your light, your obedience is affecting other people's opportunities. And he made that very clear in the beginning of April. And as I'm processing with that and as I'm dealing with that, I get an email from a broker who seen me at Publix, who gave my information to another broker. That broker calls me and says that they're going to pay for me to go to real estate school. And so I'm like, okay, well, there goes the excuse of I don't want to pay for it. And that was the excuse, I think, probably in 2009. That was my excuse. I didn't want to pay for it. I was in school at the time. I think in 2013, that might have been the same excuse. I was in Atlanta, kind of making it barely. So I was like, I can't afford no real estate school. And so that excuse was out the window. And so I'm like, okay, what other excuse can I come up with? I turn on the TV. Of course, if you know me, then you know that I actually watch HGTV more than I watch anything else. And I asked my son, I said, would it be cool for Dad to do that? He was like, do what? So I'm telling him like what they're doing. And he was like, he jumps up and down. He's like, why don't you do it? You're always watching it. Let's do it. So I tell the broker, I say, I'll do it. I'll take the course. She gives me her advice. She's like, my advice to you is get in, get it done, and go. Don't take the 6 months that it's saying that you can take. Don't finish the course and then take a year to do your test, because it's just not going to be worth it. Like, get in, commit to it, and go. And so I literally start the program. I finished the entire real estate course and passed the course in 2 weeks. That was I won't say hardest 2 weeks, but the most draining 2 weeks, because my son was here. I'm here with him by myself. I'm having to take him to school, pick him up from school. I had to work. I had to do all these different things. But I'm literally early in the morning taking sections. Late at night taking sections. I'm getting through this thing. I take a week off after I finish the course. I take a week off. I go home and visit my parents. We're closer to them now, so he's able to see his grandparents a lot more. I go home, visit my mom, and visit my dad. That always kind of calms me, kind of resets me. Something about just being home and not having any responsibility. My mom's the type of person, I don't think that no matter how much money I ever make in my lifetime, I don't think that my mom's going to let me pull my debit card out. At least not me. I think she'll probably let my sister do it. But, there's something very clear about the relationship between a mom and her son. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think that my mom will ever let me have to lift a finger when I come home to visit. And in this moment, that was something I actually was looking forward to. Just kind of clearing my mind. Because like I said, Huntsville was hard. And I jumped right from Huntsville into Atlanta, where I was in a better place. But then I jumped into this real estate course, and my mind was literally fried. I went through a crazy amount of emotions, ups and downs, jumped into the real estate course, passed it, had no idea how I passed it. Honestly, I was like, I can't believe I passed this real estate course that fast. Took a week off, like I said, came back, studied for 2 weeks to take the state exam. Went and took the state exam, passed it first try, and became a realtor. So literally from March 7th to May 12th, my life did a complete 180. And along with that, with the obedience of just following in that dream that's connected to that calling, because for me, I know my calling has to do with helping kids, helping communities. But the issue with me is that I always put my heart out there first, and I don't sit and be still and listen to what God exactly is trying to get me to do. And so completing one part one step towards my dream opened up so many doors that it was just crazy to me. Things that I've been trying to do for so long were happening instantly at this point. Instantly. Like, where did that come from? Where's these phone calls coming from? Where the emails coming from? I'm reaching out to certain people and they're actually responding now. So I'm like, that is nothing but God letting me know, thank you for listening. Now let's get to work. Thank you for listening. Now let's do more. Thank you for being obedient. Now let's do more. The church that we'll be attending here, the pastor already connecting with me, already connected with my son. My son being able to see the family that we have here. He loves being able to see them, and he loves the fact that people are actually interested in coming to see him and check on him and see me. He loves seeing his dad laugh, is what his words were. He loves seeing me laugh, and I don't know if he ever seen me laugh in the time we were in Huntsville. I don't know. But for him to say that leads me to think maybe he didn't. So a complete 180 and a complete shift in how I look at getting back out there and going after that dream once again. Because real estate is definitely a part of the bigger picture for me. It's real estate has always been that dream. It's always, I want to do the interior design. I want to be able to flip houses, and I want to show houses, and I want to look at new developments. I love everything about that. But the bigger picture of that is the connecting and the networking to get bigger things done, to be able to provide sponsorships for different high schools, to be able to provide small scholarships for kids who are going to get their trades, kids who are coming out of juvie, kids who are coming out of foster care. Like, there's a bigger picture at play that I couldn't understand why these things, these projects, these organizations that I was creating were not working, were not going anywhere, were not attracting the right people. It's because my obedience wasn't there. There was a part that was missing, and when I plugged that part in, everything else started to light up. So I say all that, and I hope that you were able to follow that story. I didn't leave anything out of the 5 years, but it's gonna feel vague because I don't put names on anything for a lot of different reasons. Like I said, the ones who will love my appreciation for them, I'm sure they wouldn't mind me saying their name, but because I didn't ask, I'm not gonna put it out there. And then the ones who are probably gonna feel like, dang, he regrets ever meeting me, or he regrets ever coming here. I don't want you to think that. I don't regret meeting people. I would just say that if I had the opportunity to make the decision over again, I don't think I would move to Huntsville. But I'm very appreciative of the relationships that I have made, and I'm appreciative of the experiences that were positive. And honestly, that last year of that basketball team, I appreciate, because if it hadn't been so bad and so disrespectful and so frustrating, I would have never jumped the way that I jumped. When I tell you I jumped and nobody could catch me but God, that's how far off the ledge I jumped. There was no coming back from how I just jumped. Literally no coming back. If God does not spot me, there's no coming back from it. And what God said to me once I got here was, I'm not going to catch you. You're going to fly. You're going to get here and you're going to fly. Which hearing him say that literally made me change the branding of my DSA organization. If you notice, if you go out there right now, they're called the Flyers. That was God's word. You're going to fly. You trust me enough to jump blindly, you're going to fly. And as scary as it is, 'cause I don't even like airplanes, I'm on this high right now that I get emotional about, because I don't quite understand why he still gives me as much favor as he does. All the decisions I've made that I don't think were great, I've ignored him so many times, it's not even funny. He's put me, transparently, this is my 5th move to Atlanta. When people tell you that I've moved a lot, I haven't moved all over the place. I've literally moved to Atlanta and then back to Alabama. For the longest, it was just Tuscaloosa, Atlanta. Tuscaloosa, Atlanta. Tuscaloosa was where my home, I was safe, I was comfortable, I knew everybody there, and I could go on campus and I could literally talk to basketball players and football players. I knew everybody in Tuscaloosa. Atlanta was where I knew God wanted me to be. But it was the scariest thing every single time. It was terrifying because there was I couldn't control it. I didn't know what was going to happen. I knew what I wanted to happen. I knew what I was being told needed to happen, but I didn't know what was going to happen. So I fearfully ran back to Alabama every single time. This is my 5th time in Atlanta. And I think having my son with me has made me a lot more fearless when it comes to saying either it's going to work or I'm going to find another way for it to work. There is no failure for me. And God said that. So the motivation I want you guys to feel is just understanding that you feel empty, you feel a depression, you feel a sense of just unhappiness, a heaviness where you are. It's time for you to get up and it's time for you to go. That doesn't always mean physically moving to another city. Doesn't always mean physically just jumping out and quitting the job today or anything like that. But it just means that something you're doing is not fulfilling you. It's not there. You're delaying a dream that is more than likely connected to the calling that God has on your life. And that's where that heaviness is coming from. That heaviness is knowing that it's bigger than just the dream. People who want to be in the NBA or want to play basketball, want to be rappers, want to be, doctors, lawyers, whatever it is, if it's a true dream and it's something you think about constantly and it's heavy on you, that means that the dream that you have, the talent that you have, is connected to the calling that God has called you for. You have to connect the two. You have to understand what that calling is. I know my calling is kids. I know my calling. I will probably foster and probably adopt I ain't no telling how many kids in my lifetime. I'll probably foster 100 kids. I'll probably adopt, I'm sure, probably 10 kids. Hopefully the wife that I'm building myself to be the man for understands that. That I'm probably gonna, look to try to adopt probably 10 kids in this lifetime probably. But I know heavier than that, my calling is on these kids who are coming out of these juvenile detention centers, the kids who are in foster care who I can't, physically come and put them in my home, the kids who are coming and trying to just get second chances, trying to get their GED, trying to go to trade school, those kids who only have a mom at home or a grandparent at home who just need somebody to believe in them. I know my calling is tied to all of that because I can tell how kids gravitate towards me. But discernment means that, hey, the kid that really needs it and the kid that really genuinely wants it is going to be 1 to every 4. And then those other 3 that come into my life, they see me for an opportunity. They see the weakness, they see the vulnerability, and they exploit that. They say the right things, they tell the right things, they tell the right stories. They connect to me on a level that makes me feel like I'm obligated to help them because they know where my heart is. But when that calling now is connected to the dream and all the talents I have, all the social media graphics and the videos and my ability to speak and creativity and all these things that I possess, I never understood why I could do so many different things. I can't do it all. But God said, yes, you can. Because it all works together. But one piece of the puzzle can't be missing for the puzzle to be complete. And that's where I'm at. I hope that you find motivation, and I hope that you're able to chase after your dream. And when you feel like you're not going anywhere. Continue to be consistent. Continue to help somebody else, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to, put yourself out there. Jump. And jump as high as you can, jump as far as you can, because you have to jump so far that the only being that can help you is God. Do not jump and put your life in the hands of other people. Let's take off. I wish you luck on your journey. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you tomorrow.